Welcome to day 15 of our scripture reading and daily encouragement. Today we're going to cover Genesis chapter 41 and Matthew 14, verses 1 through 21. So as we pick up in Genesis, it starts out saying 2 years later. So Joseph is in prison. God enables him to predict two dreams, one that got the cupbearer restored to his position and one that predicted the death of the chief baker. They were supposed to remember him, or the cupbearer was supposed to remember him. He didn't. And 2 years has gone by. And I think sometimes that's an easy thing just to gloss over. But look at the significance. 2 years Joseph has sat in prison and he didn't lose faith. So 2 years later, Pharaoh has a dream. He sees 7 fat cows, 7 skinny, then the 7 skinny eat the 7 fat. Then he sees 7 thick heads of grain, 7 skinny heads of grain, and again, very much like the cows, the skinny grain consumes the fat grain. And so Pharaoh's very disturbed because it's the same dream. He's had pretty much the same dream twice. And he tries to get all of his people to interpret it. They can't interpret it. And the chief cupbearer says, I remember my failure. He predicted, this guy named Joseph, this Hebrew boy, he predicted my dream, and I've forgotten to tell you. So Pharaoh sends for Joseph, and Joseph immediately comes. And I just think it's really cool to see Joseph did not lose his faith. He's been through a lot already, but he's been sitting in prison for 2 years after he interpreted a dream. It would have been very easy to lose faith, but he didn't. As soon as Joseph comes to Pharaoh, he immediately says, it's not me that's going to interpret this dream, but God can show you the meaning. So it shows that he still has that faith. And he then tells Pharaoh, your dream represents 7 years of prosperity. That's the fat cows, followed by 7 years of famine. And the 7 years of famine are going to be so bad that people are going to forget all the prosperity. But here you go, Pharaoh. Here's how you can manage it. I mean, don't you think it would have been easy for Joseph to be not only losing his faith in God, but also pretty angry at I know Pharaoh's not the one that put him in prison, but ultimately his leader has put him in prison. But Joseph shows his faith and his character because he immediately gives credit that God will be able to interpret the dream. And then he turns right around and offers help and advice of how Pharaoh can manage the 7 years of prosperity to be able to have enough to provide during the 7 years of famine. So it says that Pharaoh recognizes that Joseph is filled with the Spirit of God. Joseph was obedient to God. He never lost his faith, and he did nothing but try to help the people that were hurting him. And he was favored by God because Pharaoh saw that he was filled with the Spirit of God. And he appoints him to be the head of that area. And there's more to come in this story that's really cool. But at this point, it says, as Joseph was put in charge, he was put in charge of everything. Nothing could happen without Joseph. Pharaoh's the leader, but nothing could happen without Joseph okaying it. And Joseph begins to manage the food supplies. It says that Joseph is 30 years old. So he was 17 when he was sold into slavery. It is now 13 years later that he's gone through things he doesn't understand, but he's remained faithful. And the story just gets better over the next chapter as we see more time pass and God's doing some incredible things. So I can't wait to get there, but that's tomorrow's. We flip over to Matthew, to the New Testament, Matthew chapter 14, the beginning, verses 1 through 21. This is the beginning of telling about how John the Baptist was killed. As soon as that news reaches Jesus, it says Jesus mourned. He basically left on a boat to be alone. Now, some people knew where he was going, and Jesus had become extremely popular at this time because he was healing so many people. He was providing, he was doing miracles. He was providing healing. And so they chased after him. He was trying to be alone to mourn his cousin, and they chased after him and said Jesus had compassion. I cannot imagine what Jesus was going through because ultimately John died. John, his cousin, died for the cause of Jesus. And I'm sure Jesus, being the human that he was mourning for him and probably fighting off guilt and worry and that sort of thing, just like we would. But Jesus had compassion over those people that chased after him, and it said that he healed their sick. as it's getting late in the day, the disciples are trying to get their arms around, okay, what are we going to do with these people? That we got to send them off to the villages to get food. And Jesus says, oh, I'm about to show you a big miracle. What do we have? Well, we only have 5 loaves and 2 fish. That's all we have. And so many times, that's all we look at in our lives, is this is all we have. But it says that Jesus took those 5 loaves, 2 fish, he blessed them, and it says 5,000 men were fed. But then a key detail, in addition, were women and children. So in their record keeping, a lot of times they would identify how many men came to something. But I'm just doing some simple math. If every man had a wife and 2 children, that alone would be 20,000 people. And a lot of those Jewish families had big families. Now, maybe not all those men were married, but I think we could easily say it was thousands of people there that were fed. 5,000 is a big number, but it was more likely a lot more than that were fed with those 5 loaves and 2 fish. And I guess where I want to go with the encouragement from Joseph, don't give up on God. Don't lose your faith. Trust that he has a plan. This plan's been unfolding over the past couple of days as we've read this, and we hit the end of the story tomorrow, and it's exciting. Don't lose your faith. And then as we come over into the New Testament, don't get focused on what little you have, because you serve a big Jesus, a big God that can take what little you have and turn it into something incredible to help a lot of people. Hope you're blessed today and hope you have a great day.